Hello everybody, my name is Ian Boswell, I'm a video game designer, and I just played through Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea, and I just ran straight through it, trying to find all the secrets, get all the achievements, and it took me about an hour and a half, and I just reached the final apex of the game, and I gotta say, as a fan of interdimensionality and, you know, stories involving trans-dimensional travel and going from one reality to the other and six-dimensional folding, as I refer to it in my own little fictions and stuff, I'm actually working on a little turn-based strategy game which I plan to turn into a game which will revolve around people from different universes and realities coming together to fight off basically a world-hopping threat which is a danger against all of humanity. Anyway, long story short, Bioshock Infinite is a game which lays these themes of trans-dimensionality on. If it isn't obvious from the time you see the Lutece sculpture change from one gender to the other, or by the time that Elizabeth starts opening tears for you all willy-nilly, it should be pretty obvious by the third act of the game, which just comes out of nowhere. Now, hold on, Wait, I feel like we've been here before. Wait. I play the lottery, and I get number 77. Number 77? Do not pick number 77. Stop. So, in the first game, I was Booker, but then I found out later I become Comstock, and in this game I'm Booker, but I found out that earlier I was Comstock. But that would mean that the Wikipedia theory that Booker becomes Comstock in an alternate dimension at the time of his first baptism, and you don't actually become Comstock via the Booker you play as, would be completely inaccurate and false. Huh. Is my nose bleeding? Let me get a tissue. Anyway, so if we were to, break down the original theory about Comstock that I had, it's essentially that you, as Booker, that you play as, will eventually turn into the Comstock that you're facing against. It's that you're actually seeing a version of yourself who is kind of like from the future in a way. He's not from the future, he's just reliving the same moment in time over again due to a terror or something. But the point is, you will become him. He will see the Angel of Columbia, and the Angel of Columbia will in fact be Elizabeth. Having encountered her, having seen her rain fire on New York and all the stuff in the future, he sees this as an inevitability that he wants to come to pass. He wants to see her conquer the world, essentially. And even if he has to die and be martyred for that to happen, he still wants to see it happen because he loves his daughter that much that he just wants to give her the whole world. And, well, that's darn right psychopathic, but at the same time, it's also kind of sweet in its own sick, demented way, and obviously he mistreats her the whole time, abuses her, and he's really bad with, trying to keep safe the ones he loves. He always ends up hurting them. Even Anna, when he was still originally Booker, the Booker you play as in the past, before the time you start playing as Booker in the game, he sells her, obviously to his future self, but he sells her because he's just that desperate to pay off his debts and his gambling debts, and he's so addicted to gambling that he sort of forgot how to even keep safe and protect the ones he loves, or perhaps he felt that she would be better off in another place or another home, even if he was selling her to some place that honestly he didn't know to trust. I don't know. There's so many factors there. We still don't know what actually led Booker to sell her. I mean, how convinced must he have to have been convinced to do this? And how desperate of a situation must he have been in? Just imagining the mental state of a man who sells his own daughter. Obviously, there's no real redeeming qualities in the guy. And still, we see that this is the same man who later, gets his own daughter from himself in an attempt to re-obtain the daughter he never had. And that's Comstock, essentially, is that one. The one who only can take and who never tries to give anything back. And Booker just gives and gives. I'm going to go ahead and stand behind the idea right now that Booker must have multiple personality disorder, and Comstock in the same way. This is more than just another name he's taking on to hide from his past. It's a whole nother identity, which he's assuming in order to make himself escape from the horrors of the reality he once knew. And did we just let go of a girl and kill a child twice at the end? I mean, we let the little sister go into the vent, which is hot, and we let Anna go. Anna DeWitt. I mean, man, Burial at Sea isn't just about drowning Booker DeWitt. It's about drowning us, the player, in grimdark. Seriously.
To provide a place to go where you might forget.
Okay, stop right now. You're gonna tell me that the Luteces decided to send you to Rapture, and they could have sent you anywhere, and you trusted them to be sending you to a safe place where you can escape the world. I mean, face it, Comstock, the Luteces are not and will never ever be on your side. They exist across all of time and space, they can be anywhere they want, doing willy-nilly whatever the heck they want. They're like the G-Man from Half-Life 2, except worse. At least all he ever does is look at you and then give you a job to do. These two seem to be watching you over and over again to see if they can make you piss off and die over and over again. Wait a minute. Didn't I write a character like this once? Oh yeah, I remember him now. Masakari Kai, the interdimensional bounty hunter. His job was to kill the same target over and over again with no end in sight. The story starts with him having just completed a landmark 750,000th kill on the same man he's been assassinating across all possible variant realities, just because it was decided that somewhere this person has no redeeming qualities to the entire multiverse, and so he must be doomed to be assassinated again and again and again in every possible tangent of the universe that he could exist in. And this also ensures that the entire multiverse can live peacefully without ever knowing the presence of the son of a bitch. So, maybe that's where we stand. Elizabeth must feel the same way, since Comstock has very few redeeming qualities, and she's just trying to kill Booker/Comstock over and over and over again across the entire multiverse. My guess is that in the first game, she assumed that the murdering of Booker was going to bring an end to Comstock, and maybe it did bring an end to some tangential versions. I mean, after all, if he was the root cause of a possible million, billion, infinite number of potential Comstocks, drowning him right then and there was the best way to take care of it. But there could be other versions of Booker in the past which later go on to become Comstock. Smothering him in the crib would mean having to literally smother Booker while he was in the crib, not Comstock while he was in the crib. You know what I mean? Because Comstock's crib is just a baptism. Booker's crib is, well, it's a crib. And honestly, I don't see Elizabeth going that far back to kill a child, even though it seems kind of strange that she sort of interferes in her own death right here in this scene, which just really confuses me a lot, but I'm going to go into that later. So, imagine we're at the final scene of Bioshock Infinite again. The piano keys have struck, and now it's all gone black. Elizabeth, by this point, must have assumed that the entire universe was going to be unmade, save for a better one where she's still with her father. But on that last stroke, that last piano key, the universe must have not been unmade. The camera went black, but the last Elizabeth must have still remained. She was able to cut down the trunk of one tree, but like the world's largest living organism, there's more to it than meets the eye. The underground roots connect from one tree to the next, and they're all part of one giant connected network. You can't just uproot some of it, you'd have to uproot the entire beast. Chop off its head, not just in one spot, but all spots. And that is what Elizabeth must be on a mission to do. Elizabeth really certainly is on a mission.
This world values children, not childhood. There's a profit to be made and men who make it.
A prophet, huh? Perhaps she means a prophet. P-R-O-P-H-E-T. Get it? Anyway, so as I said before, the Angel of Columbia which spoke to Booker/Comstock is most likely in all truths Elizabeth, and he took her words to heart. His mental illness, or just outright lying to himself, his intense religiosity, perhaps insanity based on his exposure to the various tears in reality, whatever you want to call it, made this man who you play as the prophet of a great city. And of course the Luteces, who he had tried to kill, were instead opened up to explore all time and space and have apparently decided they are going to enjoy watching how this crazy story plays out across reality again and again and again, even going so far as to help the guy interfere with his own demise.
I may be the one who strikes you down to it, but you've always had a knack for self-destruction. Who's to say you won't beat me to the punch?
You see, I was led to believe that Comstock wasn't crazy. Yes, he's evil, but he always seemed to be in the know. Like, he knew his religious words were kind of shallow and based on half-truths gathered from his experiences while being Booker DeWitt in the game that we're playing as, saving Elizabeth from his future self and all that jazz. But now we're actually playing as Comstock, a Comstock who had some seriously tragic events happen to him, which honestly I'd say is as much Elizabeth's fault for meddling with them, trying to prevent him from kidnapping her, as it's his own fault for deciding to sell his freaking daughter and then become the man who buys his daughter from himself. But no, we've had proof positive that he's lying to himself now. So well that he's actually believing those lies. And what does having irrational beliefs mean? Ding, ding, ding. All signs point to mental illness. That's right, kids. Booker DeWitt and/or Comstock is a grade A case of multiple personality disorder. And here's my question to Elizabeth in all this. Why kill this Comstock? Was he hurting anyone? He'd hurt the little girl, sure, by letting her get kidnapped while he was distracted at the horse races, but do you think he's capable of hurting more people now that he's just trying to hide out and play the role of being a PI? Can't the poor guy catch a break? Maybe I'm sympathizing too much with the guy since I played as him, but it didn't seem like he was going to be harming more people anytime soon. Though, as Liz points out, Booker/Comstock has a very bad habit of hurting people by trying to protect them and being absolutely abysmal at it due to his gambling problems. I should point out that addiction to gambling and high religiosity are also strong indicators of him having mental illness, as is the fact that Booker did some pretty crazy things during the war, like actually scalping his enemies, and obviously the man has committed a whole heck of a lot of genocide through practically 2 lifetimes, which you could imagine would drive a guy pretty frickin' insane. You could make the argument that Elizabeth simply wants to kill this version of Comstock to make him be punished in a way for his crimes, bringing him an early death even though he's had quite a long life already, and hoping to rid him from the multiverse across multiple realities and versions of himself so that he can't hurt anybody ever again, because the potential to hurt people is always there. But I think there's actually something even bigger going on. I think that Comstock's very presence is actually what might be leading to the creation of a lot of these factors we see in Rapture happening, like the Vigors coming in and tears opening up. We see his very presence actually affecting the world around him, though that could simply be the shadow of Elizabeth stepping into his reality to try and find him too. Just as much, I should point out, that it could be the Lutece's machine which he used to get there, causing these things to happen too. Now let's talk about the world of Rapture in Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea, because frankly it's all anybody really cares about at this point. It's a world which now thinks it's free of Fontaine, but really it's just opening itself up to the eventual deception by Atlas, which we brought about with Ryan's clone/son in the future. And I must admit, I like the touch of the baptism basin in the lighthouse being where our memory went, rather than the baptism basin in the airship where you actually drown yourself/Comstock in the main timeline you're from. The only thing that doesn't make sense is, why does Liz kill this particular variant of Comstock? Why does she have to make us have an existential flashback before she does so? Does she know we're delusional enough to not remember that we're Comstock? Or is it somehow important for her to see us become Comstock before she kills us? He hurt people, yes. He even brought about Liz's own death in this reality. But what has he done other than that than try to hide away and just escape the world? He has no seeming potential to become the crazed leader of a cult again. If anything, he's just a leftover, a stain on the multiverse, which is an infinite, and you see it in the title, number of variants. Could have also decided that he hide out in numerous Raptures, numerous Columbias, numerous other places too, and all this begs the question, what's Part 2 gonna bring? We see Liz capable of a lot of cool stuff, including fitting through a really tight space like this vent, and I imagine they're setting that up for us seeing a lot of vent-crawling sections a la Gordon Freeman while prone, or some other kind of like climbing segments, or places where we use her more acrobatic skills for getting around or fitting into spaces. But I just have one question. What will we be playing as Liz for? And which version of Liz will we be playing as? Will we be playing as the same one from the DLC? And if so, why is she still in Rapture? Does she just want to escape to the surface, or is there going to be a lot more going on? I predict that her messing about with reality might actually come back to haunt her. Like some universal or multiversal force is going to have to move back against her and punish Liz for tearing apart reality and doing all this stuff. If the forces of the multiverse gave her this power for losing a pinky, imagine just how powerful the cosmic powers at work might be, even if they aren't sentient. If you dig around underground too much, you could eventually bring down the roof, or worse, you could end up under a lake and then the whole tunnel gets flooded. Liz, I think you went too far this time. You made me torture Sally, a little sister, a girl who's in a state which we know can be recovered from with the right plasmid, and you, just to teach Booker a lesson, made her suffer in a way which strangely sounds a lot like Songbird's noises, as well as the whistles which were used to summon him. I'm really not sure what that's all about, but, I mean, Liz, I think you just went way, way too far this time. I mean, the imagery, the themes, the sounds, we have a lot of bizarre crossover here, and frankly, it's very disturbing. Which, in a way, is just like good old Bioshock 1. Ah, yeah. Now, if only we could hold all the guns we find at once, and then we'd be totally freaking set. I miss having a big inventory. Am I asking for too much? Anyway, I won't lie. In retrospect, I liked the non-linearity and the spirit of Bioshock, which this DLC neatly covers. But it leaves me with a lot of questions, like, why is Elizabeth specifically killing Comstock over and over? Wasn't Comstock put to rest finally when Booker was drowned and prevented all future Comstocks from happening? Obviously, there being more past Bookers means more potential Comstocks, and really you should be killing every Booker you see left and right if you want to prevent Comstock from happening. This also meant that the whole drowning sequence at the end of Bioshock Infinite was kind of shallow, though I suppose you could say Booker deserved it for selling his daughter. Obviously, there's a lot more to heaven and earth than was in Elizabeth's currently existing philosophy. And if Elizabeth is going to have to track down and kill every single Comstock in existence, then she has a huge pile of work before her if she wants to do that. As this very tangential Comstock, which we ended up actually playing as, shows, there are in fact a lot of different Comstock variants across multiple different realities, and in this one, things didn't quite go his way, so he didn't even hang out in Columbia. He just went to Rapture to try to escape the world, and Elizabeth still managed to track him down. All this still begs for a number of questions to be answered, like, who is this samurai? Why can we summon him suddenly? I mean, seriously, what's up with that? Why does the decoy still look like classic Bioshock Infinite Booker? Wouldn't he be dressed a little differently and have gray hair? Some really nice touches I enjoyed were the war medals in his office. Comstock, unlike Booker, was very proud of the events of the Battle of Wounded Knee and his entire war history, which is why he proudly proclaimed himself a leader at several of those past events where he did some horrible, unspeakable things at the museum or / Hall of Heroes. And now he similarly seems to be continuing to celebrate that part of himself, albeit more privately. Also, the number 77 might actually mean something more than just a lucky pick or a result of a slot machine or a pick of a baseball out of a basket. Perhaps the forces which caused the number 77 to be picked are what actually led to his gambling addiction, since he seemed to have impeccable luck, at least whenever he got the first pick anyway, and it was all just downhill from there. Constants and variables indeed. I also like how a lot of people in Rapture seem to know who Booker is, and that he's apparently been up to a lot of trouble. You didn't feel like a foreigner in a strange land, rather you felt right at home, and you were sort of introducing this new lady around your usual prowling grounds. That felt really authentic and genuine, and I really enjoyed it. It was a nice introspection to what Booker's been up to while hiding out in Rapture. I liked Suchon discovering the tears and forcing the interns to watch them for hours on end until they spotted the source being Elizabeth. Suchong's brilliance was always critical throughout Bioshock, and it was good to see that he was still in strong form here. Also, what's up with Suchong saying at the Fink guy through the window, perhaps he means viewing him through a tear or a variant of Fink that's still alive in Rapture, stealing his plasmid formula? If plasmids originate from sea slugs, then how the hell is Fink using it? I thought it was pretty clear that vigors came from the siphon and were most likely produced by Elizabeth's very presence and her singing. I mean, does her singing emanate into the sea slugs too, or is that just a completely different offshoot? How do you get sea slugs in the sky? What? Anyway, also, I know this is going to sound a bit odd, but how do little sisters gather Adam realistically without people dying all around Rapture all the time, like due to the events of the Atlas/Ryan Civil War which sprung up? I mean, it seems to require a lot of dead bodies for them to squeeze Adam and their DNA out of. I mean, we understand the need for them later as gatherers, but their initial purpose just seems kind of convoluted. If plasmids/vigors are so plentiful, then why do we need gatherers yet? If you make the argument that they're just gatherers in training, that means that Ryan Industries is somehow aware of the fact in the future that everybody's going to be dying left and right in Rapture, and there's going to be a need for an army of little girls to extract that precious atom from their bodies. And if that's the case, then how the hell does Ryan Industries know about that? We already see in the makeshift prison/department store at least one little sister with her daddy protector out there already gathering Adam, which means that they plan for this to happen more in the future if they keep training more little sisters. Also, why does this bunny have red glowing eyes? And Anyway, I also liked the mentioning of Atlas near the end, proposing that even back in 1958 he had a small following building up amongst his former Fontaine cronies. The most important things, though, were the subtle themes, the elements which carried over from the Infinite storyline and shone brightly in almost every nook and cranny. The doll's head sort of resembling Elizabeth, the aforementioned numbers, Sander Cohen lending more credence to the whole Songbird crossover, the fact that buildings still appeared to bob up and down and float like Columbia's but just underwater, the dioramas of said buildings, the awesome songs, the excuse for Vigors existing in Rapture, thanks to one Mr. Fink who happens to exist at the same place or perhaps in a tear being viewed by Suchong. Maybe we'll even see more of Fink in Part 2. The baby in the carriage at the start is also an interesting image we get near the very start of the game. The woman is humming Brahms' Lullaby, which is the same song Elizabeth's Nursery has playing in it. I also like the presence of the white guy shining the black guy's shoes, which was a cool sight and a big role reversal from how he saw the status of things in Colombia with its crazy religious zealotry and racism. Even for the 50s, a moral objectivist society would be very progressive, and we also see that pointed out by the gay and lesbian couples in the game. I also like how you can faintly hear Ryan's voice on a recording in the School for Little Sisters talking about altruism as being the worst thing ever, a word which you don't often hear Ryan say out loud since it's always a big hot-button word used by Ayn Rand in philosophy, and you'd think he'd be using a little bit more. One small thing I liked, other than the whales, was the nice shadows of people walking about in the various tubes for getting around. Makes the city feel a lot more alive than any version of Rapture we've ever seen before. Also, this guy kind of looks familiar. Oh, I wonder if there's more people like that all over the place. Pretty crazy when you think about it. I mean, I know they just used a lot of shared models, but it's interesting to think about the idea of maybe these are alternate versions of people. Oh yeah, and this ring in the store came from 1887 Paris. I've noticed that Liz has a real thing for Paris. One last thing I think is particularly poignant. Everyone who joins Rapture is expected to stay there perpetually. In other words,
we were all buried at sea.
That's quite a way to think about Rapture's denizens indeed. None, even those born there, will ever see or know the surface again. Especially not poor old Booker/Comstock. He's buried at sea too, just as he's apparently been buried again and again and again across the multiverse. I do think that something might be coming from all this, something which spans the depths of human imagination, and is only limited by what story the creators of Bioshock Infinite want to tell. With so much potential bottled up, it's not really any wonder that they must have pretty big plans for Episode 2. Letting us play as Liz means a lot of the gloves come off, and a lot of new and interesting gloves will be getting put back on. Now, the biggest damning piece of evidence which supports the idea of Liz screwing with reality going to come back and bite her comes from the scene with the two guards in the back room of Fink's office. After we kill them and then go through a tear, we see them again, but they're suffering. They remember being killed somehow in the other reality, and they appear to be in a state of quantum flux, where they're both alive and dead at the same time. But even while being observed, they do not lock into one state or the other. Now this goes against everything physics says is possible, unless you take into account that there's a force of nature, Liz, following you around, which is constantly breaking the universe. If Comstock has died 2 times now, don't you think that either version would remember dying? And if Liz interferes with herself as a baby being pulled through a portal and getting actually beheaded, shouldn't that have some kind of shockwave or influence on her memories? Is that why she's able to see all the doors? Because she's only able to see the doors which she herself has gone through in both the future and the past? And if so, doesn't that mean that her existence is a very linear one, which she suffers through and has to relive the same events over and over? And why is she willing to go through with that? Perhaps her very presence, or Comstock's presence, is what brings about these tears to Rapture, turning Rapture into something of a Rapture-Columbia hybrid. We see all these similar themes popping up across the game, which seems to be the byproduct of Comstock entering Rapture, or perhaps the message goes even deeper. Perhaps we, the player, cannot escape this universe that's been created. Either way, it's a great excuse for reusing assets from an old game, since seeing something familiar in a completely different yet otherwise familiar place and blending the two together just makes it all the more uncomfortable. Personally, I can't wait to see the world through Liz's eyes, and I can imagine it looking, well, different, to say the very least. Perhaps she'll have abilities which will allow her to see the future and the past and alternate realities and go to the best possible reality for her to be in at that time, or something to that effect, and I just realized, darn it, we never got a backstory to the Songbird. I really hope Episode 2 sheds some light on his origin, or what he might be, or who he might have been. I know this might not be all that important, but all things considered, how bright and peaceful and bronze-covered all of Columbia is, why is there a giant evil-looking black crow robot thing protecting Elizabeth? I mean, I'm sure there's the Order of the Raven and all that stuff tied to it, but, I mean, come on. He just seems so out of place. I really want to know who built the Songbird. Was he summoned from a tear in some far-flung dystopian future? Was he made by Fink? I mean, just give me something. I mean, is he like just the Columbia-style version of the Big Daddy and Elizabeth is like his little sister? I mean, if the stuff that plasmids are made out of and the stuff that apparently vigors are made out of is the same chemical substance, then it stands to reason that perhaps Elizabeth has a lot in common with the Little Sisters, which is a theme that we see again and again, especially with that little sister crying next to the Big Daddy shortly after Songbird dies. I mean, Songbird is basically just a giant floating presence of that dark, seedy underbelly that comes with the Order of the Raven and the darker aspects of Columbia, and while that's cool and all, I just want a little bit something more to work with. How does something like that get made? In any case, this DLC is fairly short, but it's also sweet. And I know it's hard to imagine a 90-minute runtime when the name Bioshock is in the title, but this is still a huge look into the world of Rapture from a fresh perspective and through an alternate timeline. It has a lot of fresh and cool gadgets and plasmids and vigors, and it demonstrated to us the idea of a Rapture that is still a little bit mixed with Columbia in a way due to the interdimensional tears getting to it. All in all, I'm happy with the experience, though I'm really excited for Episode 2, as I feel that's going to be bringing a lot more to the table. Plus, playing as Liz should hopefully let us see the more omnipotent-like side of her powers, which she's capable of using, and not just guiding someone along, helping them by opening tears and throwing health, vigors, and ammo at them. I mean, I know I've asked this question before, but why is she helping me out if all she's going to do is inevitably kill me anyway? The longer you keep this Booker/Comstock alive, the more potential Bookers and Comstocks you could end up creating in the future through tangential reality. I mean, the more happenstance and random events trigger the creation of alternate realities and multiverses, the more potential you have of there being more Comstocks and Bookers to have to deal with. And I don't know, have you ever heard of efficiency? Anyway, I'm gonna stop beating that dead horse. The cool thing about tangential realities is it means that every single playthrough that every player who's ever played the game could, in a way, be canon to the storyline. I mean, think about it. Every player playing this DLC would be like a variant of Booker/Comstock. If you play the gambling game a few times, or only once, or never, you've already got 3 different Bookers. And when you go to the different shops and Liz either sweet talks or threatens the owners while you look around for the bunny mask in the back, the order in which you go to those 3 different shops can be different every time, and you always end up finding the bunny mask in the last one you check. Therefore, those are also alternate realities every time you play through, if you play through multiple times, or again, multiple people have played through it in the same or different ways. It just seems really out of the way to have to go through the part of dancing, getting electrocuted, fighting a bunch of splicers, closing a bunch of vents, all for the sake of just awakening the Comstock within Booker and then killing him once again. In any case, we've got a lot of really fun stuff coming up down the line, and I can definitely say that this DLC is worth it if you haven't played it. You should definitely check it out. I've got Let's Plays here and here, one with commentary, one without. In any case, thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and as always, I hope that you like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to stick around for more analysis videos of Bioshock Infinite and various offshoots and storylines in the future. I've also got some requests to do some Let's Plays now that I'm, like, aware of everything that happens in the sequel, and maybe, like, play through the original again, and even play through Bioshock 1, and possibly even 2, even though 2 isn't really canon to the story. I've got a lot of stuff coming down the line, so stay tuned, as always, and thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a great day.